defense wins championships, or if you're Tim Kawaikami from the San Jose Mercury News, it wins you the No Defense Player of the Year award because it's time to focus on those who really don't play defense as well as they should be to be NBA elite players that they are. So, Tim, I think if I'm pronouncing this correctly, no offense, Tim, Kawaikami from the San Jose Mercury News drew up first his philosophy on why he decides or how he decides these players. He says, do opponents' eyes light up when they realize they're being guarded by one specific player? And do coaches have to change the defensive system strictly to protect one player? And if they do, does the guy still screw up, and do those issues show up on the team's defensive performance? He also claims that he uses the eyeball test for a lot of this, so there is a lot of subjectivity to the guys he chose. Let's first look at who he chose for the last 6 or so years of the No Defense Player of the Year awards. Going back to the inaugural award of Steve Nash in 2008, Kevin Martin in 2009, and he showed up again in 2013. Edu Turkoglu, who just retired.
I know, perfect timing.
After a long tenure in the NBA. 2011 was Al Jefferson. 2012 was Melo Licious. And then 2014, Kyrie Irving. So he has a lot of candidates for the 2015 No Defense Player of the Year, but he also goes to break it down by position. The two that really stood out to me because they have so much name value were Damian Lillard and Blake Griffin. Starting with Damian, where here's what he had to say. Most of the time, it's almost as if Lillard just stops playing when he's screened. He doesn't work through it. He doesn't switch hard. He doesn't rotate. It's just in his mind. Once somebody makes contact with him, the defensive possession is over. Time to play offense now, except the opponent still has the ball. Lillard also has the habit of getting back late in transition, trotting to one spot, then staying anchored there, and refusing to rush out to defend a shooter at the three-point line, even when he actually should be rushing out to the three-point line. Now, to Damian Lillard's discredit defensively, one of the things we saw last year from the NBA playoffs was they put Lillard strictly on Tony Allen against the Memphis Grizzlies. What does Tony Allen not do?
He doesn't shoot.
Yeah,
or score.
Right.
But
he sometimes shoots.
I think they're related, yeah.
Never scores. Tony Allen was the first team all-defense, though, wasn't he? The guy who screamed out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he screamed out first team all-defense, which is amazing. But they put Lillard, and that was a great example of it. And I do agree with Kawaikami on certain aspects of this, that he loses track, not loses track, but not gives up either, but he loses it on screens. Lillard's also not that big of a guy, and if you're getting screened on somebody that's as tall as some of the power forwards in the league, or as powerful as some of they are that are setting the screens up top, you have no way to work around it. It's like going around a wall. Granted, Lillard, I'm going to let you speak on because I know how much Damian Lillard means to you, and also to any NBA fan out there, because Lillard offensively is a powerhouse.
Right. Well, to put that into context, I spent some time covering the Blazers for a little bit, so I know a bit about this Blazers team. Unfortunately, the Blazers team we see now is a far cry from the Blazers teams that we saw even last year. The funniest thing to me about Lillard is this, first of all, has nothing to do with defense, but I'll get to that, is every time the other team scores, watch Lillard. He just runs up to the guy out of bounds and just sticks his hands out at him. He wants the ball so badly every time. He cannot wait to start scoring again. It's the funniest thing. And I think that does play to his defensive intensity or lack thereof. And in this, Terry Stotts, I think it has been a pretty solid NBA coach thus far.
Look at what he's done with the team this year.
Exactly. This is his fourth year, right? His fourth year as the Blazers coach.
Yep.
And I think Tim, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name.
Don't worry about it.
Our friend Tim, does the team change their defensive schemes around a certain player as an indicator of that player being a non-defensive player of the year candidate? And that is unbelievably the case with Damian Lillard. Terry Stotts, to his credit, has done everything he possibly can to make sure that Lillard not only doesn't have to play on the other team's primary scorer, but he doesn't have to switch onto the team's primary scorer. And I think he covers that in his article, and you can just watch tape. Lillard isn't switching. He's running back to his guy and making his other wing players, who are now Nick Batum and Wes Matthews, no longer on that team, follow their guy around through picks, through hedges, through baseline runs up and down, no matter what, because they do not want Lillard on a primary scorer on the other team, and I think that does speak volumes about his defensive capabilities. Now, that being said, he's young. He's, 24 years old?
Yeah.
What 24-year-old kid wants to do anything but shoot the ball when you can shoot like D-Lo can?
Well, so that's one of the things that, in comparison with Lillard and most point guards in the league, how many shutdown point guards are there defensively? For a while, Chris Paul, not so much anymore. And I was going to say Mike Conley, right? Is very physical
When you
and
think
unbelievable.
defensive point guard, you think Mike
That's
Conley.
what you think, exactly. And now you think of just mask and playing with like no knees and no arms and no body because he was so beaten up last year in the playoffs. But he still was able to defend, and that's one of his major value points to Mike Conley. He mentioned Steve Nash as one of the non-defensive player of the year award winners. But it's interesting because Steph Curry's a bad one-on-one defender, but a great team defender. Lillard, the difference, and Steve Nash was a bad one-on-one defender, but a pretty good to mediocre team defender.
To be fair, nobody on those Suns teams were playing much defense.
No, it's just they also were using the shot clock was 7 seconds long in their books.
That's true.
But so the reason with Lillard is that he's not a good team defender. But when your estimated wins like above your replacement level is second in the league right now, no, you really don't need to worry about your defense because he is so important to that team offensively, scoring, running that offense, and so much credit to Terry Stotts. So much credit to him. Because that was a team that I really thought was going to win 20 games this year, but now I have my hesitations lower than the 25.5 they had the over-under on. So with Lillard moving forward, it's not too much. He can get better on defense if he wants to, but I don't think it's going to be cataclysmic to the Pacers, the Blazers winning any kind of championships in the future.
My last point was that I think we could have seen some significant improvement from Lillard if the team continued to remain competitive in the Western Conference playoffs. So I think them losing all those players and then blowing up the roster really did a lot of negative things to his defensive playmaking abilities. Because I think he doesn't have the onus on him anymore to keep trying because they're not going to make the playoffs.
No.
Just keep scoring.
Especially in the West. If they were in the East with Terry Stotts, I believe they actually could.
Exactly.
So moving forward with some of the guys on this list, Enes Kanter is one of the guys on the list, and just to summarize Enes Kanter's defense, it sucks, so we don't really need to talk too much about it. He looks a little bit clueless out there, and he's not even that great of an offensive player that it makes up for the fact.
Well, that's not fair. He's a pretty good offensive player.
Give him I think he's okay.
For a center in the NBA, he's a pretty good
Yes, but that's only because the good centers in the league don't exist. How many pure centers are there in the league?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It counts for something.
Well, okay, fair enough. I'll give you
some
of that.
I have no stake in the Enes Kanter.
But it's so much more important. I'd always rather have a rim protector than any offensive center.
Right, and I think
always.
When I first saw Enes Kanter's name on this list, the first thing that it made me think of was, when will Steven Adams just completely usurp Enes Kanter's role in the offense?
Right.
Because they got him last year because everybody was hurt. Durant was hurt, Westbrook was hurt. They needed somebody to put the ball in the basket. Now that they have these players back, Kanter's becoming a little bit obsolete, so it might not even be an issue moving forward.
Yeah, well, that's very true. He's going to get less and less minutes. Maybe if you improve some of his defense and you can become
but that's hard because Steven Adams is a very solid defensive player.
Yes, well, exactly. But again, and he's more effective. His overall plus-minus is better than Enes Kanter's, and he's not putting the ball in the rim, in the hoop nearly as much.
But they knew that getting Enes Kanter.
Fact. That's a fact. But another major name value player on this list was Blake Griffin. Now, it's tougher with Blake Griffin to... Damian Lillard, I can concede, he's a bad defensive player. Blake Griffin, he makes some points, and I think he unfairly compared him to Carmelo Anthony because Carmelo Anthony is atrocious on defense.
Yeah.
In my view, Blake is following the Carmelo Anthony career path on D, the very good offensive player who tried a little bit on D early on, but decided to shut it down somewhere in the middle of his career to conserve energy for offensive endeavors. It's a bold statement. I like that he's making the bold statements. You're entitled to your opinions, Mercury News, Tim. But moving forward, these are great offensive players who perpetually dive to the hoop, beg for fouls, then lounge around in the backcourt complaining about no calls while the opponent races back up court and gets a wide open shot because Griffin and Carmelo are so late getting back. Melo is late getting back. I don't think Blake is that late getting back, although I know executive producer Dan over here, as a big-time Clippers fan, is the first person to admit that the Clippers are a bunch of whiners. Yeah. And they complain a lot about their fouls. We did a great clip of them flopping and complaining to refs last season. Another clip you should check out. We can leave that somewhere in this clip as well. But I just, from the eyeball test, I don't think Blake is that bad of a defender. I just think the power forwards in the league are that effing good, and small forwards in the league are that good, top to bottom, that what are you going to hold a guy to his average? I consider, if you hold any player to 5 points below what they're scoring on average, you're doing a good enough job.
And I completely agree with you. I think there are two things to look at here. First of all, and I think our friend Tim touches on this Mercury Tim touches on this later in the article. Doc Rivers is not a good defensive coach anymore. He used to be.
I think he got the non-defense coach of the year.
Yeah, non-defense coach of the year, exactly. So if you look at that team, nobody plays defense except for DeAndre Jordan.
Right, and he's
So
ferocious.
I think it's a little unfair singling out Blake Griffin when, in terms of the eyeball test, he's not late that often. He doesn't get blown by. He's a big, strong, fast, athletic dude. And most of the time, I think he puts his fair share in on the defensive end. Now, with that being said, I think what Blake Griffin does do that infuriates Clippers fans is he gambles a lot on defense. He does the let's go for the steal in the passing lane thing that a lot of perimeter players do, and doesn't get it a lot because it is a gamble.
He does have the athleticism to do it, but it just doesn't translate.
And I think he gets those steals and he gets his hand on the ball more than the average player does. So he's more inclined to keep doing it because he has maybe a higher success rate because he's so big and athletic. But at the end of the day, that gets him out of defensive position. And when you're that close to the basket as a power forward, it's really hard to rotate that quickly. And
that's true. And they mentioned that Blake's not his Glocks. They mentioned that Blake Griffin's blocks comparatively to other players at his position are far lower, that guys like James Harden blocked more shots last year than Blake Griffin did. Granted, the thing with that is that they call so many fouls in the NBA that some of those blocks that Blake had last season were called as fouls and vice versa.
Also, I have two words for that. DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, and he's getting most of the blocks.
The goal of every interior defender on the Clippers is to funnel people to DeAndre Jordan so we can swat their shots into oblivion.
Right. That's exactly true. It is very true. The article goes on to list more players for the No Defense Player of the Year, but we really wanted to highlight some of those for you guys on the clip. We'll leave the article link in the description box below. Check it out. Overall, I'm not trying to bash the article. I like when
Actually,
writers...
I think outside of Blake, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I do too. I thought it was
really, really worth reading.
And it's a ballsy article. That's what I like about it. There's not a lot of places where you're going to find writers really going in depth and backing up their points as to why.
Take that, ESPN.
Yeah, exactly. Good for you, San Jose. Where is San Jose?
It's an hour south of San Francisco.
South of San Francisco.
About 4.5 hours from here.
Not going to visit there. I know the Sharks play there. That's all I know. But in terms of the article, make sure to click on it, give it a tweet or a thumbs up or something, and give us a tweet or a thumbs up or something. Like, favorite, subscribe.
And I'll give you one right back.
Follow Jeremy R at Jeremy R327 and Jason at Jason Rubin 91, as well as TYT Sports. Before you go, make sure to check out TYT Sports on Watchable.com, a cool new platform offering the best digital video content. Please check it out and let us know what you think about the viewing experience on Watchable. Our goal is to have TYT Sports on every great platform, and we'd love to hear your feedback. That's Watchable.com.